What if I told you a 17-year-old boy, sold for 20 pieces of silver by his own brothers, would become the second most powerful man in the ancient world? This isn't fiction. This is Joseph's story, and what happened to him will blow your mind. Deep within the territory of Canaan, in a place where heaven appeared to meet the horizon and divine promises resonated across the hills, there existed a household whose future would transform the course of an entire nation. This narrative follows Joseph, a youth whose path was shaped by visions, deceit, hardship, and steadfast belief. He was Jacob's child, the descendant of Isaac, and carried the lineage of Abraham. Joseph entered a lineage selected by the divine, with the essence of sacred covenant flowing through his bloodline. His tale demonstrates the way providence operates during humanity's bleakest moments, transforming terrible circumstances into chances for fulfilling a magnificent purpose. We'll explore this remarkable account of someone who started as a cherished child, became enslaved through betrayal, and eventually ascended to rank among the greatest leaders in antiquity. This narrative chronicles Joseph, a regular person guided by an exceptional deity. Joseph arrived as Jacob's 11th offspring, resulting from profound affection for Rachel, the lady his father had labored 14 years to marry. Within Genesis chapter 30, verses 22 through 24, we observe this meaningful occasion of his arrival. At that time, the Creator recalled Rachel. The divine heard her pleas and granted her the ability to bear children. She conceived and delivered a male child, declaring that the Almighty had removed her shame. She called the boy Joseph, expressing her hope that heaven would grant her an additional child. Joseph represented something beyond merely another member in Jacob's extensive household. He occupied an exceptional position within his father's affections. Genesis chapter 37 verse 3 states that Israel cherished Joseph beyond all his remaining children, since the boy had arrived during his later years, and he created a decorated garment for the youth. This clothing represented something extraordinary. It served as a clear sign of the distinct affection Jacob felt toward Joseph. This powerful relationship linking parent and child had significant origins. Joseph represented Rachel's first child, the spouse Jacob genuinely adored. Throughout many seasons, Rachel had stayed childless, as Leah, her sibling, produced offspring for their husband. Therefore, when Joseph eventually arrived, he represented an answered petition, the result of genuine affection. For Joseph, his parent exemplified trust and integrity. For Jacob, Joseph brought brightness during his twilight years. The garment Jacob presented to Joseph stood apart from anything else. This lengthy, vibrant clothing resembled what royalty might wear, distinguishing the wearer as someone special, released from the difficult fieldwork his siblings performed. Whenever Joseph dressed in this garment, it served as a constant signal to all about his privileged position. This garment would quickly transform into a significant element within his tale, initially representing affection, later becoming associated with tremendous suffering. However, what Jacob meant as an expression of care, his remaining children interpreted as evidence of unfairness. Jacob's preference generated increasing conflict within the household. Genesis chapter 37 verse 4 shows how Joseph's siblings responded. After the siblings observed how their parent cherished this boy beyond all others, they despised him and were unable to offer him any pleasant conversation. Envy started spreading through their minds like an invasive plant, eliminating any fondness they might have previously felt. Every caring gesture Jacob showed Joseph simply increased the bitterness felt by the remaining siblings. They stopped viewing Joseph as family and instead regarded him as danger, a youth who had taken their parents' love. That vibrant garment represented for them an ongoing symbol of the unfairness they felt they experienced. As they labored exhaustingly under the sun, Joseph moved about unrestricted, dressed in privilege, the child who escaped their shared responsibilities. Household conflicts intensified dramatically when Joseph, merely 17 years of age, started experiencing powerful and clear visions that appeared to suggest a time when he would exercise power over his relatives. Not completely grasping their significance, or what might happen if he revealed them, Joseph shared these visions with his siblings. His initial vision appeared during a peaceful evening. Within Genesis chapter 37, verses 5 through 7, Joseph describes it. Joseph experienced a vision, and after sharing it with his siblings, their hatred intensified further. He told them to hear about this vision he experienced. All of us were gathering grain bundles in the open land when unexpectedly his bundle lifted itself and remained standing, as their bundles formed a circle around his and bent before it. This vision represented something beyond a youth's fantasy. It contained a sacred communication, a forecast regarding what the Creator planned for Joseph's life. Those bundles represented Jacob's household, and Joseph's bundle standing tall indicated the leadership role he would eventually assume. Their response came immediately and harshly. Genesis chapter 37, verse 8 shows their answer. The siblings questioned whether he planned to rule them. Would he truly govern their lives? Their hatred grew stronger due to his vision and the words he spoke. Shortly afterward, Joseph experienced another vision, which proved even more remarkable. Genesis chapter 37, verse 9 states, he experienced an additional vision and shared it with his siblings. Pay attention, he told them. Another vision came to him. And during this one, the celestial bodies, including the sun, moon, and 11 bright lights, were prostrating themselves before him. This vision expanded the message significantly. Beyond just his 11 siblings, represented by lights bending down, his parents, shown as sun and moon, would also honor him. Such a daring forecast for any youth to reveal, particularly someone already carrying the burden of sibling resentment. After Joseph shared this vision with both his parent and siblings, Jacob himself felt disturbed by what it suggested. Genesis chapter 37, verses 10 through 11 describes, after telling both his parent and siblings, his parents scolded him, asking about this vision's meaning. Would his parents and siblings truly approach and prostrate themselves on the earth before him? The siblings felt envious toward him, yet his parent reflected on these words. Jacob's correction addressed more than the vision's substance. It concerned Joseph's poor judgment. Jacob seemed to communicate disbelief that he, the family leader, would honor his own child. However, despite publicly correcting Joseph, Jacob contemplated the significance privately. He understood that the Creator frequently communicated using visions, and maybe something profound was developing. For Joseph's siblings, however, these visions became intolerable. Little did Joseph know, sharing these dreams would trigger a chain of events that would tear his family apart. What happens next will shock you, because the people who should protect you can become your worst enemies. Their parents' preference already proved difficult to accept, yet imagining themselves eventually honoring Joseph. This thought was insufferable. Resentment transformed into fierce animosity, simply awaiting an appropriate opportunity to explode. Later on, Joseph's siblings traveled to Shechem, approximately 80 kilometers, about 50 miles away from Hebron, to watch over their parents' animals. During their absence, Jacob chose to dispatch Joseph to inspect their well-being. Genesis chapter 37, verses 13 through 14, shows when Jacob dispatched Joseph for this task. Israel told Joseph that his siblings were watching the animals around Shechem. He wanted to dispatch him there. Joseph agreed immediately. Jacob instructed him to verify whether everything was fine with the siblings and animals, then return with information. He dispatched him from Hebron's valley. Joseph never challenged his parents' instruction. Despite understanding his siblings despised him, he followed orders immediately. This compliance remained a central characteristic throughout Joseph's existence, something that would persist during his entire experience. He departed Hebron dressed in his distinctive clothing, not realizing this would mark his final encounter with his parent for numerous seasons. Upon reaching Shechem, Joseph searched for his siblings yet couldn't locate them where he anticipated. While he roamed the region looking for signs of their presence, an apparently random meeting would change his entire existence. Genesis chapter 37 verses 15 through 17 describes, "Someone discovered him roaming the countryside and inquired about his search. Joseph answered that he sought his siblings. He asked if the person knew their location with the animals. The person responded that they had departed, having heard them mention traveling to Dothan. This meeting happened by design. The Creator directed Joseph's movements, including during this apparently insignificant instance. The individual didn't merely notice Joseph roaming. He posed the perfect inquiry and coincidentally understood precisely where the siblings had traveled. This represented heavenly guidance, appearing as chance. Using this fresh knowledge, Joseph traveled toward Dothan, resolved to complete the assignment his parent had provided. His thoughts during this extra travel remain unknown. Maybe he felt enthusiasm about meeting his siblings, or possibly he sensed concern regarding upcoming events. Regardless, he continued forward, committed to completing his parents' request. While Joseph approached Dothan, he identified his siblings far away. Unknown to him, they had already noticed his presence. Genesis chapter 37 verse 18 states, "They noticed him far away, and prior to his arrival, they planned his death." The lone person moving in their direction, dressed in his recognizable, vibrant clothing, was quickly identified. This identification instantly revived every resentment accumulated within their souls. While Joseph came closer, likely gesturing or shouting greetings without sensing peril, the siblings were already scheming his downfall. In just a few seconds, Joseph's life would change forever, and the betrayal about to unfold would make your blood run cold. Their separation involved more than mere space. It represented the psychological gap that preference and resentment had established among relatives. Seeing Joseph approaching, the animosity they had nurtured discovered expression. Away from their parents' watchful presence, they could execute their bitter feelings. Genesis chapter 37 verses 19 through 20 reveals their sinister intentions. That vision haver approaches. They agreed among themselves to eliminate him, dispose of him in these wells, then claim a wild beast consumed him. Afterward, they would discover what happened to those visions. Animosity had clouded Joseph's siblings' judgment. They stopped recognizing their family member, their own relative, seeing instead merely that vision haver, their contempt's target. Their scheme was savage yet straightforward. Execute Joseph, discard the remains in an empty well, then fabricate the truth. They believed this would eliminate his visions of superiority. Nevertheless, the siblings weren't unanimous. Reuben, being eldest, intervened. Being the oldest child, he understood his accountability and realized he must face their parent. Genesis chapter 37, verses 21 through 22, documents his involvement. After Reuben learned this, he attempted saving Joseph from their control. He suggested avoiding murder. He proposed avoiding violence. He suggested placing him in a desert well without harming him physically. Reuben spoke intending to save Joseph from the others and return him to their parent. Reuben's strategy showed more compassion, though remained seriously problematic. He planned to covertly come back, retrieve Joseph afterward, then escort him securely home. However, he lacked the bravery to directly confront his siblings, selecting a compromise approach instead, a solution that eventually failed to achieve his intentions. Without knowledge of the plot against him, Joseph eventually arrived where his siblings were. What followed was immediate and brutal. Genesis chapter 37 verses 23 and 24 recount these events. Once Joseph approached his siblings, they removed his clothing, that special decorated garment he had on, then grabbed and cast him down into a well. The well contained nothing. It held no liquid inside. One can barely picture the terror and confusion Joseph experienced at that instant. Moments before, he had been completing an assignment, somewhat content with his task. Then, instantly, he found himself seized, his garment removed from his body, that exact representation of his parents' affection, and cast into an arid hole. This well, a cavity carved from stone designed for gathering precipitation, remained dry during that season. The depth was significant and shadowy, leaving Joseph helpless to climb out alone. The youth who had envisioned magnificent things now remained trapped underground, gazing upward toward his siblings' expressions, which showed not affection, but contempt. Inside that hole, Joseph certainly shouted and begged for compassion. Many seasons afterward, his siblings would recall this instance with profound remorse. Within Genesis chapter 42, verse 21, they would acknowledge that they faced consequences for their siblings' treatment. They recalled witnessing his anguish while he begged them to spare him, yet they ignored him. Joseph's desperate appeals met indifferent listeners. Everyone except Reuben had closed off their emotions. After trapping Joseph inside the hole, his siblings began their meal like everything was normal. This demonstrated remarkable indifference and absence of empathy, yet during their eating, an unexpected development occurred, an event that would permanently alter historical events. Genesis chapter 37, verse 25, explains that while they began their food, they noticed a traveling group of Ishmaelite traders arriving from Gilead. The traders' animals carried aromatic substances, healing ointments, and fragrant resins, traveling toward Egyptian territory. These were traders moving along the established commercial path, linking Mesopotamia with Egypt, crossing through Canaanite territory. Observing these traders, Judah, among the siblings, conceived a suggestion he presented as less cruel, though it actually accomplished both eliminating Joseph and fulfilling his personal avarice. Genesis chapter 37 verses 26 and 27 document what he proposed. Judah asked his siblings what benefit they would receive from murdering their sibling and hiding his death. He suggested trading him to these Ishmaelite traders without physically harming him themselves. He reminded them Joseph remained their sibling, sharing their bloodline. The siblings accepted this. Judah's suggestion appealed to the siblings for dual reasons. This avoided actually committing homicide, partially relieving their guilt while providing monetary benefit. Additionally, transferring Joseph to traders heading toward Egypt guaranteed his distance would prevent any possibility of returning to expose their deception to Jacob. They immediately executed this revised strategy. Genesis chapter 37 verse 28 records this transaction. When those Midianite traders arrived, the siblings lifted Joseph from the hole and exchanged him for 20 silver pieces with the Ishmaelite traders who transported him toward Egypt. This text references Ishmaelites alongside Midianites, probably showing this trader group contained various peoples, distinct tribes, yet all tracing ancestry to Abraham via children besides Isaac. Joseph's sale price, 20 silver pieces, represented the standard value for youthful slaves during that period. For his siblings, Joseph's worth equaled merely that amount. The youth who previously envisioned magnificence had transformed into simple merchandise, traded like animals, removed from his territory and relatives. Reuben, having privately intended Joseph's rescue, was absent during his siblings' transaction. Genesis chapter 37, verses 29 and 30 reveal his response after coming back. After Reuben came back to the hole and discovered Joseph missing, he ripped his garments. He approached his siblings, asking where the youth had gone. He questioned what options remained for him. Reuben experienced authentic anguish, concerned for Joseph while also feeling accountable as the oldest sibling facing their parent. During this time, the trading group proceeded toward Egypt, transporting Joseph among their various merchandise. For Joseph, this marked his entry into an unfamiliar nation where the speech, practices and beliefs remained foreign. All familiar and beloved things stayed behind. His parent Jacob, his native land, his liberty. His prospects appeared dismal and desperate, yet the divine hadn't forsaken him. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. What seemed like the end was actually just the beginning of something extraordinary. Actually, using this awful unfairness, the Creator was starting to accomplish those visionary messages previously given to Joseph. After Joseph departed toward Egypt, the siblings needed to handle their scheme's remaining portion. How would they explain their preferred sibling's absence to Jacob? They chose to construct a detailed falsehood to mislead their parent. Genesis chapter 37, verses 31 and 32 explain their deceitful actions. They obtained Joseph's garment, killed a young goat, then soaked the garment in its blood. They brought this decorated garment to their parent, claiming they discovered it. They requested he inspect whether this belonged to his child. The vibrant garment, previously representing Jacob's affection toward Joseph, became central to their heartless trick. The siblings avoided directly claiming Joseph had died. Rather, they displayed the proof, allowing Jacob to form his personal judgment, creating an especially cunning deception through its indirect nature. Upon meeting their parent, minimal words were necessary. They merely presented the bloodied garment while acting uncertain about its ownership. This represented deliberate heartlessness, arranged so their parent would assume the worst scenario without them speaking the falsehood directly. Jacob responded precisely as the siblings expected. Genesis chapter 37, verse 33, shows his instant recognition. He identified the garment, declaring it belonged to his child. He concluded a savage creature had killed him. He believed Joseph had been violently destroyed. Jacob reached the exact judgment they intended. His anguish proved unbearable. Genesis chapter 37, verses 34 and 35, portray his intense sorrow. Jacob then ripped his garments, dressed in mourning cloth, and grieved for his child numerous days. Every child attempted consoling him, yet he wouldn't accept comfort. He declared he would descend to his burial place, still grieving for his child. Thus, his parent continued crying over him. The scripture reveals someone entirely crushed by sadness. Ripping garments and dressing in rough cloth represented visible demonstrations of profound sorrow within their society. Yet Jacob's anguish exceeded simple tradition. This represented sadness rejecting comfort, suffering he stated would continue until his passing. The harsh reality shows every offspring attempted consoling him, even those siblings who had traded Joseph and created this complete deception. They acted like they experienced their parents' suffering while concealing reality. Joseph remained living, traveling toward Egypt in bondage. Jacob stated he would grieve until reuniting with his child beyond life, showing his plan to exist his remaining time in sadness. Losing Joseph, his preferred child, Rachel's offspring whom he adored, created an injury he thought would remain forever. He couldn't know that eventually he would learn the incredible revelation that Joseph lived and possessed tremendous authority within Egypt. While Jacob fell into endless sadness, Joseph's siblings continued their existence, bearing their awful truth's burden. They had eliminated their resented sibling, yet the price proved significant. Seasons of existing alongside remorse while observing their parents' perpetual anguish. During Jacob's endless crying, thinking his child had perished, Joseph reached Egypt in bondage. His existence had completely reversed within mere days. The transition from preferred child to enslaved foreigner appeared permanent. However, despite these terrible conditions, Joseph wasn't isolated. Genesis chapter 39 verse 1 describes Joseph's Egyptian arrival. Joseph had been transported into Egypt. An Egyptian named Potiphar, serving among Pharaoh's authorities as guard commander, purchased him from those Ishmaelite traders who had brought him. Potiphar represented someone important, a senior authority serving as Pharaoh's guard commander. This placed Joseph within the residence of someone possessing considerable Egyptian social standing. Within this unfamiliar foreign environment, remarkable developments started happening. Genesis chapter 39 verses 2 and 3 state that divine presence remained alongside Joseph, bringing him prosperity while residing in his Egyptian owner's residence. The owner observed that divine presence accompanied him, granting him achievement in all endeavors. This represents an incredibly meaningful point in Joseph's account. During apparent hopelessness, distant from everything familiar, enslaved in bondage, the scripture specifically notes divine presence remained alongside Joseph. The Creator hadn't forsaken this youth. Divine presence within Joseph's existence provided beyond just religious reassurance. It appeared through concrete results. Joseph succeeded in all activities, so much that his Egyptian owner, someone following different deities, recognized something exceptional about this young Hebrew bondsman. Joseph's abilities proved remarkably impressive, rapidly gaining Potiphar's confidence. Genesis chapter 39 verse 4 states, Joseph earned approval and served as his personal assistant. Potiphar assigned him authority over his residence, placing all possessions under his management. For an imported bondsman recently obtained, receiving management over complete properties was absolutely remarkable. Joseph's advancement within Potiphar's residence persisted. Genesis chapter 39 verses 5 and 6 explain that after appointing him over his residence and possessions, divine favor touched the Egyptian's residence due to Joseph. Divine favor covered all Potiphar possessed, including residence and land. Therefore, Potiphar delegated all possessions to Joseph's management. Having Joseph managing affairs, he focused solely on his personal meals. Joseph's beneficial impact proved powerful enough to deliver favor throughout Potiphar's complete residence. Agriculture thrived, commerce succeeded, and operations functioned efficiently, entirely through Joseph's involvement and, consequently, divine involvement working via him. Potiphar understood Joseph's importance and granted complete power. His sole focus remained his personal meals, a phrase probably meaning his private matters, particularly his spouse, which becomes significant soon. The scripture includes another observation regarding Joseph. Joseph possessed an impressive physique and attractive features. This apparently small detail gained significance subsequently, since Joseph's attractive appearance would quickly attract unwanted interest from Potiphar's spouse. Joseph's circumstances within Potiphar's residence appeared to achieve steadiness. Despite bondage, he maintained substantial authority and confidence, yet his looks combined with his household position would quickly create fresh difficulties. Genesis chapter 39 verse 7 indicates this emerging issue. Eventually, his owner's spouse began noticing Joseph, propositioning him to become intimate together. Potiphar's spouse wasn't content with simply observing Joseph from a distance. She displayed boldness and directness regarding her desires, proposing an illicit affair. Joseph confronted an extremely genuine and perilous enticement. Being youthful, distant from his homeland, surrounded by a society holding contrasting ethical standards. Additionally, the person pursuing him held influence, being his employer's spouse. Numerous individuals facing Joseph's situation would have surrendered, yet he demonstrated remarkable moral fortitude. Genesis chapter 39 verses 8 and 9 revealed Joseph's resolute answer. He declined, telling his employer's spouse that with his management, his employer didn't worry about household matters. All possessions had been placed under his supervision. Nobody held greater authority in this residence than himself. His employer had kept nothing from him besides her, since she remained his spouse. Therefore, how might he commit this terrible action and offend the divine? Joseph's statement shows much regarding his principles. Initially, he recognizes his duty toward Potiphar, understanding the confidence given to him. More significantly, he describes this action as offending the divine. Despite being in Egypt, distant from relatives and religious society, Joseph stayed committed to his convictions and ethical principles. Potiphar's spouse, nevertheless, wouldn't accept defeat easily. Genesis chapter 39 verse 10 informs us that although she approached Joseph repeatedly each day, he declined joining her intimately or remaining near her. This represented more than a single enticement. The pressure continued relentlessly. Each passing day, Joseph experienced pursuit. Still, he maintained his resolve. The circumstances reached their peak during an occasion when Joseph was working inside the residence without any other staff present. Genesis chapter 39 verses 11 and 12 relate this encounter. During one particular day, he entered the residence for completing his responsibilities, with no domestic workers present indoors. She seized his garment, demanding he join her intimately. However, he abandoned his garment in her grasp and escaped from the building. Potiphar's spouse intensified her advances, physically grasping Joseph's garment while attempting to compel him. Joseph responded instantly and decisively. He escaped, abandoning his garment. This powerfully showed that Joseph valued divine loyalty above personal security or ease. His departure, nevertheless, transformed her attraction into fury. Feeling spurned and dishonored, she planned revenge. Genesis chapter 39 verses 13 through 15 describe the following events. After noticing he had abandoned his garment in her possession and escaped the building, she summoned the domestic workers. She told them to observe how this Hebrew person was sent among them for mockery. He entered attempting to assault her, yet she cried out. After hearing her cry for assistance, he abandoned his garment near her and escaped the building. Potiphar's spouse entirely distorted the events. She presented herself as the target when actually she had been the pursuer. She utilized Joseph's garment, which ought to have proven his blamelessness, as fabricated testimony opposing him. Cleverly, she additionally invoked cultural bias by emphasizing Joseph's Hebrew origins, his foreign status, and she continued further. Genesis chapter 39, verses 16 through 18 proceed. She retained his garment nearby, awaiting her husband's arrival. Subsequently, she presented this account. The Hebrew bondsman you introduced approached her for mockery, yet when she cried for assistance, he abandoned his garment near her and escaped the building. This charge was deliberately constructed to incite Potiphar's fury. She didn't merely claim Joseph tried attacking her, she also indirectly criticized Potiphar for introducing Joseph to their residence. The fabrication was presented so persuasively that Potiphar accepted his spouse's account unquestioningly. Joseph was about to hit rock bottom. But sometimes God does his best work in the darkest places. Watch what happens next. Potiphar responded immediately and harshly. Genesis chapter 39, verses 19 and 20 state that after his employer learned the account his spouse presented, describing how his bondsman had acted toward her, fury consumed him. Joseph's employer seized him and imprisoned him where royal captives were held. For Potiphar, the proof appeared undeniable. Joseph's garment remained with his spouse, and she had presented a believable account. Despite possibly having uncertainties, being an elevated authority within Pharaoh's administration, he needed to respond to preserve his standing and dignity. Joseph, the youth who had already endured being traded into bondage and had established himself within Potiphar's residence, currently encountered another devastating downfall. After being an honored and reliable manager, he transformed into a captive, sentenced for offenses he never performed. Again, he suffered from society's unfairness. The facility Joseph entered wasn't an ordinary detention center. It housed royal captives, probably a maximum security location designated for government criminals or individuals who had offended the palace. For Joseph, this represented another lowest moment in his existence. Still, within this bleak period, the scripture provides encouragement. Genesis chapter 39, verse 21 states that divine presence remained alongside Joseph, displaying compassion and providing approval from the detention supervisor. Within imprisonment, the Creator's companionship stayed with Joseph. Similar to how Potiphar had previously identified something exceptional within him, the detention supervisor quickly noticed it too. Similarly to how the vibrant garment had provoked resentment among his siblings and his appearance had provoked attraction from Potiphar's spouse, currently Joseph's nature would radiate despite the shadows of Egyptian imprisonment. The divine purpose for his existence continued developing, despite unfairness and hardship. Pharaoh's detention center wasn't typical. This harsh structure housed dishonored palace members. Within, isolated from all familiarity, Joseph began another period of existence, wrongly charged with offenses he never performed. The frigid, moist barriers of Egyptian imprisonment might destroy anyone's resolve. Yet Joseph displayed uniqueness. According to Genesis chapter 39, verse 21, divine presence accompanied him, demonstrating compassion and providing approval from the detention supervisor. Despite imprisonment's depths, the Creator hadn't forsaken Joseph. The primary supervisor, managing every captive, quickly identified something exceptional regarding this youthful Hebrew. Although uncertain precisely how Joseph behaved during those initial imprisonment days, presumably he demonstrated identical principles and commitment shown within Potiphar's residence. His behavior certainly distinguished itself. Genesis chapter 39, verse 22 explains that the supervisor assigned Joseph authority over every detained individual, making him accountable for all activities occurring inside. This represented extraordinary advancement. From simple captive, Joseph advanced to the supervisor's assistant, managing everyone else. The supervisor's confidence toward Joseph proved absolute, since Genesis chapter 39, verse 23 states the supervisor ignored all matters within Joseph's supervision, as divine presence accompanied Joseph, providing achievement in all endeavors. This situation reflects previous events within Potiphar's residence. Joseph's principles and managerial abilities again distinguished him. Remarkably, the scripture consistently highlights one crucial detail: divine presence accompanied Joseph. The author appears to emphasize that although circumstances proved awful, Joseph wasn't isolated. The Creator's companionship persisted in following and favoring him, including within somewhere unexpected, like Egyptian imprisonment. As fellow captives probably existed hopelessly, Joseph actively worked, excellently administering the detention center. He converted discipline into possibility. Rather than surrendering to desperation, Joseph maintained divine trust while utilizing his abilities completely, despite difficulties. Eventually, after Joseph assumed detention management, 2 significant new captives entered. These weren't regular individuals. They represented elevated authorities within Pharaoh's administration. Genesis chapter 40 verses 1 through 3 explains that subsequently, the drink server and food preparer for Egypt's ruler upset their employer, Egypt's monarch. Pharaoh felt furious toward these 2 authorities, the primary drink server and primary food preparer, placing them under guard captain's supervision within the identical detention center holding Joseph. The scripture doesn't detail these authorities' specific wrongdoing, merely that they upset Pharaoh. Within ancient society, minor errors preparing imperial beverages or meals might appear gravely serious, possibly suggesting assassination attempts against the ruler. Regardless of their error, its severity sufficed to anger Pharaoh and cause their detention. As significant individuals, these authorities received Joseph's supervision. Genesis chapter 40 verse 4 states the guard commander placed them under Joseph's responsibility, and he served them. Joseph wasn't simply administering detention. He individually managed these distinguished captives' requirements. During one evening, something remarkable occurred. Genesis chapter 40 verses 5 through 7 explains that both individuals, the drink server and food preparer for Egypt's monarch, detained within imprisonment, experienced visions during one evening, with individual visions containing distinct significance. After Joseph approached them the following day, he observed their distress. Therefore he questioned Pharaoh's authorities, detained alongside him within his employer's facility, asking about their sadness that day. Joseph demonstrated exceptional awareness by recognizing the 2 individuals' troubled state. He might have dismissed their feelings while concentrating on duties, yet rather he observed their concerned expressions and inquired about their troubles. This minor, compassionate action displayed Joseph's considerate nature. The individuals answered within Genesis chapter 40 verse 8, stating they both experienced visions, yet nobody could explain them. Joseph responded that explanations come from the divine. He requested they share their visions. Joseph's answer proves especially noteworthy. Within a nation containing fortune tellers and vision explainers, Joseph didn't claim expertise. Rather, he attributed everything to the divine, stating solely the Creator genuinely explains visions. This represented courageous declaration from a Hebrew captive within Egypt's center. The primary drink server began. Within Genesis chapter 40, verses 9 through 11, he described seeing a plant before him containing 3 stems. While developing, it flowered, with bunches becoming mature fruit. Pharaoh's vessel remained in his grasp, so he collected the fruit, pressed them into Pharaoh's vessel, then presented the vessel to him. The vision contained meaningful elements including the plant, its 3 stems, and fruit being squeezed for Pharaoh's vessel. The drink server possibly anticipated terrible news, yet Joseph delivered an encouraging explanation. Within Genesis chapter 40, verses 12 and 13, Joseph clarified that the 3 stems represented 3 days in duration. After 3 days pass, Pharaoh would elevate his position and reinstate him to his duties, allowing him to serve Pharaoh's vessel once more, exactly like he previously performed as the drink server. Joseph's explanation proved direct and clear. Within merely 3 days, the drink server would regain his role within Pharaoh's administration. Wonderful information indeed. However, Joseph continued speaking. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he included an individual appeal. Within Genesis chapter 40, verses 14 and 15, we observe Joseph's request that after everything improves for him, he should keep Joseph in mind and demonstrate compassion. He asked him to speak about him to Pharaoh and secure his freedom from imprisonment. Joseph explained he was taken against his will from Hebrew territory, and within this place he had committed no offense warranting placement in this cell. This represents a profoundly personal instance within Joseph's account. Although maintaining his belief and confidence in the divine, Joseph remained someone experiencing unfairness. He viewed the drink server as possibly providing freedom. Perhaps his circumstances might eventually improve. Joseph simply requested being recalled, asking the drink server to advocate for him before Pharaoh. Observing the positive explanation provided to the drink server, the primary food preparer became brave enough to reveal his personal vision. Within Genesis chapter 40, verses 16 and 17, he described experiencing a vision too. 3 containers holding food sat upon his head. The highest container held various pastries meant for Pharaoh, yet flying creatures consumed them from the container sitting on his head. His vision similarly included the quantity 3 and connected to his occupation, yet contained an ominous aspect, those flying creatures consuming from his head's container. Unfortunately, Joseph's explanation proved discouraging. Within Genesis chapter 40, verses 18 and 19, Joseph answered explaining the significance. Those 3 containers symbolized 3 days. After 3 days pass, Pharaoh would remove his head and display his remains on a stake, where flying creatures would consume his body. This additional vision carried a devastating explanation. After 3 days, Pharaoh would order the food preparer's death. Those flying creatures consuming from his container represented actual birds that would consume his corpse following execution. Contrary to the drink server, he wouldn't receive reinstatement, instead meeting a terrible fate. Joseph's bravery in communicating this harsh revelation deserves recognition. He might have minimized the impact or fabricated something pleasant, yet he decided on honesty despite difficulty speaking and receiving such information. Exactly like Joseph had foretold, an important event occurred within Pharaoh's administration after 3 days. This day marked festivities, a significant event throughout the realm. Genesis chapter 40 verse 20 explains that the 3rd day marked Pharaoh's birth celebration, where he hosted a banquet for every authority. He addressed the situations of both the primary drink server and primary food preparer. Before his authorities, Pharaoh's birth celebration provided an ideal opportunity for significant verdicts. During the festivities, encircled by authorities, Pharaoh announced his decision regarding both detained officials. Monarchs traditionally offered clemency or delivered verdicts during such joyful events, and this instance followed tradition. The account proceeds within Genesis chapter 40, verses 21 and 22. Pharaoh reinstated the primary drink server to his role, enabling him to serve Pharaoh's vessel again, yet he ordered the primary food preparer's execution, precisely matching Joseph's explained meaning. Joseph's explanations materialized perfectly as described. The drink server resumed his previous position, again serving vessels to Pharaoh. Meanwhile, the food preparer faced death, displayed on a stake, matching Joseph's forecast. This accurate accomplishment of these visions demonstrated Joseph's genuine heavenly ability. He wasn't simply forming logical assumptions or interpreting feelings. The divine had authentically disclosed these visions' significance through him. For the drink server, this occasion delivered happiness and renewal. He went back to the royal residence, continued his responsibilities, and probably offered gratitude to Egyptian deities for favorable circumstances. For the food preparer, this day delivered the disaster Joseph had predicted. Yet concerning Joseph, did the drink server, having regained his role, recall discussing the young Hebrew person with Pharaoh? Would Joseph's cell entrance finally unlock? Regrettably, events unfolded differently. Genesis chapter 40 verse 23 states that the primary drink server didn't recall Joseph. He completely overlooked him. 2 years. Joseph would wait 2 more agonizing years in that prison. But God was setting up something massive. The next dream that needed interpretation would change the fate of nations. Reading this passage feels nearly heartbreaking. Following Joseph's assistance to the drink server, explaining his vision and providing encouragement throughout imprisonment's difficult period, this individual merely overlooked him after resuming palace life. Maybe during his restoration's happiness, the drink server became absorbed in palace festivities and comforts. Possibly he intentionally refrained from discussing assistance from a Hebrew captive. The scripture doesn't specify the duration, yet Genesis chapter 41 verse 1 reveals that after 2 complete years, Pharaoh experienced a vision. This indicates Joseph stayed overlooked within imprisonment for 2 entire years, following the drink server and food preparer incidents. 2 years spent waiting, 2 years of seeming desertion. During this period, Joseph reached approximately 30 years in age. His complete young adulthood occurred distant from his homeland, initially enslaved. For most people, this waiting and hardship duration would destroy any lingering optimism. Yet the divine hadn't completed Joseph's story. Actually, the most remarkable occurrences remained ahead. 2 complete years elapsed with Joseph still imprisoned before something extraordinary occurred within the imperial residence. Pharaoh, personally Egypt's highest leader, considered by citizens as an actual deity, experienced troubling visions nobody could decipher. Genesis chapter 41 verses 1 through 4 relates the initial vision. After 2 years, Pharaoh envisioned himself positioned near the Nile waterway. Unexpectedly, 7 robust and nourished cattle emerged from the waterway and started feeding near the vegetation. Following these, 7 additional cattle emerged, appearing hideous and skeletal, positioning themselves near the initial group along the water's edge. Then those hideous, skeletal cattle consumed all 7 robust, nourished cattle. Subsequently, Pharaoh awakened. This represented an exceptional vision. The Nile sustained Egyptian existence, while cattle represented abundance and reproduction. Yet within this vision, an abnormal event happened. The weak, diseased cattle consumed the powerful, attractive cattle. This troubling scene indicated disruption within nature's balance. Pharaoh returned to sleeping, yet his slumber became disrupted through another similarly peculiar vision. Genesis chapter 41, verses 5 through 7 describes how he slept once more, experiencing another vision. 7 grain clusters, robust and excellent, developed from one plant. Following these, 7 additional grain clusters emerged, shriveled and damaged from eastern winds. Those shriveled grain clusters consumed all 7 robust, complete clusters. Subsequently, Pharaoh awakened. This had been another vision. Once more, the vision contained essential Egyptian existence representations, now featuring wheat, their nutritional foundation. Again, a concerning sequence appeared. The deteriorated and valueless overwhelmed the plentiful and precious. These visions profoundly unsettled Pharaoh. Genesis chapter 41 verse 8 states that during morning his thoughts became anxious. Therefore he summoned every sorcerer and scholar throughout Egypt. Pharaoh described his visions to them, yet nobody could explain their meaning. Egypt gained fame for its sorcerers, religious leaders, and vision explainers. Pharaoh accessed the territory's most educated and skilled individuals. They examined historical documents, consulted Egyptian deities, applying every ability for understanding imperial visions. However, currently, none delivered explanations meeting Pharaoh's needs. His concern certainly increased following every unsuccessful effort. Within historical Egypt, visions, particularly those appearing clear, representative and recurring, represented heavenly communications. The inability of educated individuals explaining them suggested extraordinary circumstances beyond Egyptian traditional understanding. During palace chaos, frantically seeking explanations, Joseph stayed overlooked within imprisonment. But in 24 hours, everything would flip. The forgotten prisoner was about to become the most powerful man in Egypt. Here's how it happened. Yet the divine remembered him, with his freedom's occasion approaching. Pharaoh's paired visions, expressing identical messages using varied imagery, fulfilled a function. They weren't simply products of an unsettled imperial consciousness or digestive discomfort. They represented heavenly communications, not intended for Egyptian sorcerers possessing incorrect knowledge, rather for a youthful Hebrew individual trusting the genuine divine. Joseph's imprisonment period approached conclusion, with Pharaoh's concerning visions becoming his freedom's catalyst. The divine had spent years allowing Joseph to experience difficulties, preparing him for this exact occasion when he would need to explain what Egypt's most educated individuals couldn't comprehend. Since every Egyptian scholar failed to decipher Pharaoh's visions, the royal residence became filled with worry and stress. During this crucial period, the primary drink server eventually recalled Joseph. Genesis chapter 41 verses 9 through 13 documents when he finally spoke. The primary drink server addressed Pharaoh, saying that currently he recalled his failures. Pharaoh had previously become furious with his staff, imprisoning him alongside the primary food preparer within the guard commander's facility. Both experienced visions during the identical evening, with individual visions containing unique meanings. A youthful Hebrew person stayed there alongside them, working for the guard commander. They shared their visions with him, receiving individual explanations for their respective visions. Everything happened precisely according to his explanations. He regained his role, while the other received execution. Eventually, following 2 lengthy years, the drink server recalled Joseph. Observe his presentation of Joseph before Pharaoh, describing him beyond a simple captive, rather as an individual possessing remarkable abilities, having previously provided accurate vision explanations. Pharaoh responded instantly. Genesis chapter 41 verse 14 states that Pharaoh summoned Joseph, who was rapidly retrieved from confinement. Following grooming and putting on fresh garments, he appeared before Pharaoh. Joseph's circumstances transformed dramatically and instantly. At one instant, he remained an overlooked captive. Immediately after, he found himself summoned before Egypt's most influential individual. The reference to Joseph grooming and dressing differently demonstrates his understanding of this occasion's importance. Egyptian society greatly appreciated cleanliness, particularly for anyone appearing before Pharaoh. Picture this moment. Joseph, the youthful Hebrew person, traded into bondage and wrongfully detained, currently moved across imperial hallways, accompanied by security toward the chamber containing Pharaoh's presence. His pulse certainly accelerated, though his confidence stayed with the divine who had supported him during every challenging period. Upon finally facing Pharaoh, elaborate ceremonies were absent. The leader urgently desired his visions explained. Genesis chapter 41 verse 15 records Pharaoh telling Joseph about experiencing a vision without anyone able to explain it. However, he had learned that Joseph could explain visions after hearing them. This represented a straightforward declaration, nearly demanding. Pharaoh wasn't requesting assistance. He declared his expectations. Being Egypt's total leader, he expected immediate compliance without questioning. Joseph's answer, though, demonstrated exceptional modesty. Within Genesis chapter 41, verse 16, Joseph answered Pharaoh that he personally lacked this ability, yet the divine would supply Pharaoh's desired explanation. This response shows Joseph's genuine nature. Standing before the recognized world's strongest individual, he avoided attempting self-promotion or claiming personal achievement. Rather, he indicated the divine. This proved courageous within Egypt, where numerous deities existed and Pharaoh personally represented divinity. Joseph declared confidently that the Hebrew divine, beyond Egyptian deities, beyond sorcerers, beyond Joseph personally, would supply the explanation. This showed belief and modesty, probably surprising Pharaoh, accustomed to counselors continuously seeking approval. Despite Egyptian authorities' grandeur or this occasion's seriousness, Joseph maintained his principles and beliefs. He understood every talent or capability originated from the divine, promptly acknowledging this source. Pharaoh, possibly curious about this surprising answer or merely needing an explanation, continued describing his visions thoroughly. Currently, Joseph needed confidence that the identical divine who provided explanations during imprisonment would assist once more within Egypt's administration. Following careful attention to Pharaoh's paired visions, Joseph immediately provided explanations. He communicated with assurance and precision, originating solely from the divine. Genesis chapter 41, verses 25 through 28, document his explanations beginning. Joseph addressed Pharaoh, saying both visions represented identical messages. The divine had shown Pharaoh upcoming events. Those 7 healthy cattle represented 7 years, matching those 7 healthy grain clusters representing 7 years. Both visions communicated identically. Those 7 skinny, unattractive cattle appearing subsequently represented 7 years, matching those 7 damaged grain clusters destroyed by eastern winds. These indicated 7 years containing starvation. Joseph clarified that both visions actually communicated a single communication, duplicated for highlighting its reliability and significance. The cattle alongside grain represented years, 7 containing prosperity, then 7 containing extreme starvation. The vision's duplication through varied images indicated heavenly resolve. Proceeding within Genesis chapter 41, verses 29 through 31, Joseph explained further that 7 years containing tremendous prosperity approached across Egyptian territory, followed by 7 years containing starvation. Subsequently, every prosperity within Egypt would disappear, with starvation destroying the territory. The territory's prosperity wouldn't remain memorable, since following starvation would prove extremely harsh. Joseph provided beyond simple explanation, clarifying the circumstances' seriousness. The approaching starvation would prove devastatingly powerful, entirely eliminating memories of prosperous periods. This would become an unmatched emergency, potentially destroying the territory. Within Genesis chapter 41, verse 32, Joseph continued explaining that the vision appearing twice for Pharaoh meant the divine had conclusively determined this event, implementing it quickly. This concluding explanation section provided obvious caution. This wasn't some remote chance, rather a heavenly arrangement currently proceeding. The vision's duplication indicated immediacy and reliability. Many explainers would conclude there, satisfied with resolving the enigma. However, Joseph proceeded beyond. He suggested actionable recommendations. Within Genesis chapter 41, verses 33 through 36, he advised Pharaoh to identify an intelligent and capable individual, assigning him control across Egyptian territory. Pharaoh should designate representatives across the territory, gathering 20% from Egyptian production throughout those 7 prosperous years. They must gather every resource during these favorable periods, preserving grain with Pharaoh's permission, maintaining supplies within urban areas for consumption. These resources must remain stored for the nation's use throughout 7 starvation years approaching Egypt, preventing national destruction through starvation. Joseph provided beyond simple forecasting. He supplied an entire remedy. His strategy proved precise and detailed. Designate an intelligent manager controlling Egypt entirely. Create a gathering mechanism, collecting 20% from production throughout prosperous periods. Construct preservation centers within urban areas for grain accumulation. Utilize these stockpiles throughout starvation periods, avoiding nationwide catastrophe. This represented exceptional management planning, displaying Joseph's religious understanding alongside his governance and organizational abilities. His experience supervising Potiphar's estate and imperial detention had equipped him for presenting nationwide administration. Pharaoh's and authorities' response showed instant respect. Genesis chapter 41, verses 37 and 38, explains the strategy appeared excellent to Pharaoh and every authority. Therefore, Pharaoh questioned whether anyone comparable existed, containing divine presence. Notably, Pharaoh personally acknowledged divine presence accompanying Joseph. For Egyptian leadership, following various deities while believing themselves holy, acknowledging Joseph's divine proved remarkable. Joseph's knowledge and personality had significantly affected Pharaoh's consciousness. Joseph's actionable recommendations, alongside his explanations' precision, created lasting impact. Through one meeting, Joseph transformed from an overlooked captive into an honored counselor within antiquity's strongest administration. Everything occurred since he willingly acknowledged the divine for his talents. Affected by Joseph's knowledge, Pharaoh decided surprisingly. Instead of merely appreciating the explanation then dismissing him, Pharaoh recognized Joseph as perfectly suited for executing his own suggested strategy. Genesis chapter 41, verses 39 and 40 documents Pharaoh's declaration. Pharaoh addressed Joseph, stating that because the divine had disclosed everything, nobody matched his intelligence and knowledge. Joseph would control his residence, with everyone following his instructions. Solely regarding authority would Pharaoh exceed him. This represented unmatched advancement. Within moments, Joseph transitioned from captive to Egypt's second strongest individual. Solely, Pharaoh ranked higher structurally. This choice demonstrated Joseph's significant impact while showing Pharaoh's perception of approaching emergency severity. For establishing this remarkable designation, Pharaoh performed representative rituals. Genesis chapter 41, verses 41 through 43, relates these events. Pharaoh declared to Joseph his assignment controlling Egyptian territory entirely. Pharaoh removed his official seal from his hand, placing it upon Joseph's hand. He provided him elegant fabric garments plus a golden necklace. He arranged for him to travel via transport befitting his deputy position, with individuals announcing his approach. Therefore, he assigned him controlling Egyptian territory entirely. Every ritual component contained significant historical Egyptian meaning. The official seal represented imperial power. Its carrier could approve papers using Pharaoh's identity. This resembled obtaining the instrument authorizing territorial regulations. The elegant fabric garments remained exclusive for aristocracy and religious leaders. These indicated cleanliness and superior rank. Joseph, previously dressed in bondage and detention attire, currently wore Egypt's best materials. The golden necklace represented distinction and community acknowledgement. This served as an apparent indicator for everyone that Joseph enjoyed Pharaoh's approval. The imperial vehicle indicated authority and visibility. Joseph currently possessed permission to journey throughout Egypt representing Pharaoh. The announcers shouting for clearance informed all people that Joseph had transformed from a scorned outsider into someone commanding universal honor. Pharaoh proceeded to establish Joseph's updated role. Within Genesis chapter 41, verse 44, he stated his identity as Pharaoh, yet lacking Joseph's permission, nobody could perform any action throughout Egypt. This statement established complete control. Everything within Egypt required Joseph's consent. Such nearly boundless authority was granted to someone previously enslaved and detained. Joseph's existence couldn't have changed more dramatically. For completely incorporating Joseph within Egyptian culture, Pharaoh performed two additional important actions. Initially, he provided Joseph an Egyptian title. Genesis chapter 41 verse 45 explains Pharaoh called Joseph Zaphenath-Paneah while arranging his marriage with Asenath, whose father Potiphar served as religious leader at On. The title Zaphenath-Paneah probably signified divine communication and existence or secret disclosure. This recognized Joseph's special talent for vision explanation. This different title facilitated Egyptian acceptance of Joseph's elevated role, considering an outsider's title could encounter opposition. Additionally, Pharaoh organized Joseph's union with Asenath, offspring of an important religious leader, specifically from On, also called Heliopolis, among Egypt's most significant spiritual locations. This union connected Joseph with Egypt's spiritual leadership, providing increased community position. Joseph had entered Egypt as an impoverished bondsman, traded by his siblings. Currently, via remarkable events directed divinely, he practically equaled a ruler, possessing an alternative identity, a spouse from distinguished lineage, plus control throughout the entire territory. Joseph's account powerfully illustrates the way the divine transforms terrible circumstances into possibilities for accomplishing greater intentions. Joseph immediately began executing his strategy. 7 prosperous years lay ahead, yet starvation would arrive, making each preparation moment valuable. Genesis chapter 41, verses 46 through 49, describes Joseph's initial activities. Joseph reached 30 years when beginning Pharaoh's employment within Egypt. Then Joseph departed Pharaoh's company and journeyed across Egypt. Throughout those 7 prosperous years, the territory yielded abundantly. Joseph gathered every resource created during Egypt's 7 prosperous years, preserving them within urban centers. Within individual cities, he preserved resources cultivated from nearby lands. Joseph accumulated massive grain amounts resembling oceanic sand. The quantity proved excessive for documentation, since measurement became impossible. At 30 years, Joseph finally witnessed his youthful visions materializing. He had transitioned from confinement to royalty, currently journeying across Egypt, establishing history's most comprehensive preservation program. This account demonstrates Joseph didn't merely occupy authority issuing instructions. He journeyed across Egypt, individually managing his strategy's execution. Within all cities, he created storage facilities preserving regional crops. This represented intelligent distribution planning. Grain remained nearby, ensuring all areas possessed individual stockpiles when starvation arrived. Those 7 years provided such prosperity that Joseph stopped calculating preservation amounts. The quantity resembled oceanic sand, a scriptural phrase indicating something countless. The strategy succeeded beyond predictions. Throughout this successful period, Joseph's individual circumstances also thrived. Genesis chapter 41, verses 50 through 52, explains that prior to starvation years arriving, Joseph received 2 children through Asenath, offspring of On's religious leader Potiphar. Joseph called his initial child Manasseh, explaining the divine enabled him to overlook every hardship, plus his parents' residence. His additional child received the title Ephraim, explaining the divine granted him productivity within his hardship's territory. Joseph's children's titles show significant details regarding his psychological and religious condition during this period. Manasseh signifies causing forgetfulness. Joseph recognized divine assistance in healing from his siblings' betrayal and parental separation. Joseph hadn't erased family memories, which becomes evident subsequently, yet those memories' anguish had decreased through divine purpose. Ephraim signifies doubly productive. This title acknowledged divine transformation of Joseph's hardship into success. Following bondage and detention years, Joseph currently maintained distinction, possessed relatives, and existed purposefully. His siblings' harmful intentions became divine benefit. Finally, those 7 prosperous years concluded, matching Joseph's forecast, and starvation started expanding throughout the territory. Genesis chapter 41, verses 53 through 54, explains Egypt's 7 prosperous years concluded. Then 7 starvation years started, matching Joseph's statement. Starvation affected every surrounding territory, yet across Egypt's complete territory, sustenance existed. This starvation didn't solely impact Egypt, it extended to nearby areas too. This became an area-wide emergency, affecting various countries and populations. Nevertheless, because of Joseph's strategy, Egypt exceeded other countries' readiness. Citizens responded rapidly. Genesis chapter 41, verses 55 and 56 proceeds, stating that once Egypt experienced starvation, citizens requested sustenance from Pharaoh. Pharaoh instructed every Egyptian to approach Joseph, following his directions. After starvation expanded throughout the nation, Joseph accessed every storage facility, providing grain to Egyptian citizens, since starvation proved harsh across Egypt. The program functioned precisely as designed. Once citizens experienced hunger, Pharaoh remained unconcerned. He merely directed them toward Joseph, who managed everything. Joseph accessed storage facilities containing prosperous years' supplies, starting systematic grain distribution. Notably, the scripture indicates Joseph traded grain with Egyptian citizens. This represented managed commerce, not complementary distribution. This probably prevented disorder, accumulation, or squandering. This additionally guaranteed program continuity during 7 extended starvation years. The emergency proved severe enough to extend past Egyptian boundaries. Genesis chapter 41 verse 57 states, "Everyone globally approached Egypt purchasing grain from Joseph, since starvation proved harsh universally." This concluding passage establishes conditions for Joseph's account's subsequent significant event, sibling reconciliation. The starvation expanding globally finally affected Canaan, containing Jacob plus Joseph's remaining relatives. The emergency potentially destroying Egypt both preserved the country while providing methods for Joseph's relatives' protection and reconciliation. Joseph's divinely motivated strategy functioned flawlessly. After being an overlooked captive, he transformed into a complete country's protector, unknowingly protecting his relatives too. His path from whole to royalty approached completion, yet the divine retained additional developments for this devoted individual. The starvation Joseph predicted extended past Egyptian boundaries. It expanded throughout surrounding territories, encompassing Canaan, containing Jacob plus Joseph's remaining relatives. While sustenance decreased, Jacob learned Egypt possessed available grain. Within Genesis chapter 42, verses 1 and 2, we observe information reaching them. After Jacob discovered Egypt possessed grain, he questioned his children about their inactivity. He stated learning Egypt possessed grain. He instructed them to travel there, purchasing supplies ensuring survival instead of perishing. Jacob dispatched 10 children toward Egypt for sustenance purchases, yet retained Benjamin, the youngest, domestically. Genesis chapter 42, verse 4, describes Jacob avoiding dispatching Benjamin, Joseph's sibling, alongside others, fearing potential danger befalling him. Benjamin represented Rachel's sole remaining child besides Joseph, making Jacob highly defensive regarding Benjamin following Joseph's loss. Upon the siblings' Egyptian arrival, they encountered Joseph, similar to all grain purchasers. Genesis chapter 42 verses 6 and 7 relates this encounter. Joseph served as territorial administrator, the individual trading grain with everyone. Therefore, after Joseph's siblings reached him, they prostrated themselves before him. Upon observing his siblings, Joseph identified them, yet acted unfamiliar, addressing them sternly. 20 years after they sold him, the tables had completely turned. What Joseph does next will leave you speechless. This represents an impactful story element. Those visions Joseph experienced youthfully, which had provoked sibling fury, currently materialized actually. They prostrated before him, matching his initial vision's bundles. Still, Joseph delayed self-disclosure. Rather, he charged them with espionage. Genesis chapter 42 verse 9 states he recalled his visions regarding them, calling them intelligence gatherers. He claimed they arrived observing territorial vulnerabilities. The siblings forcefully objected, describing themselves as single parents' children from Canaan. Joseph maintained these charges, detaining them for 3 days. Subsequently, he suggested verification. Someone would stay imprisoned as insurance, while remaining siblings traveled to Canaan retrieving Benjamin, their referenced younger sibling. This verification, he claimed, would demonstrate integrity, confirming they weren't intelligence gatherers. The siblings discussed their challenging circumstances together, unaware Joseph comprehended their conversation. They communicated using Hebrew, expecting he required translation. Genesis chapter 42 verses 21 and 22 documents their exchange. They acknowledged experiencing consequences for their siblings' treatment. They recalled observing his suffering while he requested mercy, yet they refused attention. Therefore, this hardship affected them. Reuben answered, questioning whether he hadn't warned against harming the youth, yet they refused attention. Currently, they faced responsibility for his death. Learning this, Joseph became profoundly affected. Genesis chapter 42 verse 24 states he departed from them, crying. Despite those elapsed years, betrayal's suffering remained present. Currently, observing his siblings' authentic regret, Joseph became emotionally overpowered. Joseph selected Simeon for detention, commanding remaining siblings' containers receive grain. Privately, he directed that their payment return within their containers, including supplies. The siblings left, abandoning Simeon detained within Egypt. After 9 siblings came back domestically, they explained all events to Jacob, surprisingly finding payment within their containers. Genesis chapter 42 verse 35 states that while unloading their containers, every individual discovered his silver bag inside. After they, alongside their parent, noticed these payment bags, fear overcame them. Jacob became devastated, considering dispatching Benjamin toward Egypt. Within Genesis chapter 42 verse 36, he grieves, saying they had taken away his offspring. Joseph has vanished, Simeon has vanished, and currently they desired Benjamin. All circumstances opposed him. Reuben attempted comforting his parent, presenting his personal children as security for Benjamin's protection. Yet Jacob remained determined. His child wouldn't travel there alongside them. The sibling has perished, leaving only this one. Should danger befall him during their travel, they would cause his elderly self to descend sorrowfully toward death. Nevertheless, starvation continued, ultimately exhausting their provisions. Jacob requested his children's return toward Egypt for additional resources, yet Judah recalled they couldn't travel, lacking Benjamin. Genesis chapter 43 verses 3 through 5 documents Judah's statement that the individual seriously cautioned them, preventing them from meeting him without their sibling present. Should they dispatch their sibling alongside them, they would travel purchasing sustenance. Yet, should they refuse dispatching him, they wouldn't travel, since the individual stated they couldn't meet him without their sibling present. Eventually, Judah presented himself as security for Benjamin's protection, pledging to Jacob that he personally would assume accountability. He could consider him directly answerable. Should he fail returning him safely before him, he would accept responsibility throughout his existence. Persuaded through this pledge, Jacob ultimately consented. He directed his children to bring presents for Egypt's administrator, including healing substances, sweetener, aromatics, fragrant resin, nuts, and tree nuts, plus twice the payment for replacing previously discovered amounts. With heavy emotions yet determined, the siblings departed toward Egypt, currently bringing Benjamin alongside. After Joseph observed Benjamin accompanying his siblings, profound feelings stirred. He commanded his manager to escort them toward his residence for dining. The siblings became worried, believing they faced consequences regarding previously discovered silver. Within Joseph's residence, they clarified all details to the manager, who calmed them, saying tranquility belonged to them. They shouldn't worry. Their divine being, their parents' divine being, placed riches within their containers. He had obtained their payment. Subsequently, he released Simeon toward them. After Joseph entered for dining, they offered their presents while prostrating before him. He inquired regarding their parents' condition, subsequently observing Benjamin. Genesis chapter 43 verses 29 and 30 records this touching instance. While observing and identifying his sibling Benjamin, sharing the identical mother, he inquired whether this represented their smallest sibling previously described. He expressed divine favor toward him. Profoundly stirred observing his sibling, Joseph quickly departed, seeking privacy for crying. He entered his personal chamber, crying inside. Throughout the feast, Joseph arranged his siblings according to birth sequence, eldest through smallest, amazing them. How might this Egyptian authority understand their respective ages? Subsequently, he provided Benjamin 5 times additional portions compared to others, carefully examining potential remaining resentment among them. The following day, Joseph arranged their containers, receiving grain once more, again replacing their payment within containers. However, currently he included something additional. His personal silver vessel entered Benjamin's container. Shortly following departure, Joseph dispatched his manager, pursuing them, charging them with stealing. Certain regarding their blamelessness, the siblings declared should any worker possess it, death would follow, while remaining individuals would serve as bondsmen. After discovering the vessel within Benjamin's container, they ripped their garments in distress. Returning to Joseph's residence, Judah advanced, presenting an emotional request, volunteering himself for bondage, replacing Benjamin. Within Genesis chapter 44, verses 18 through 34, Judah describes the complete circumstances, discussing Jacob's affection toward Benjamin. Explaining this child's absence would certainly cause the elderly individual's demise. Judah's concluding statement shows significant personality transformation. He requested permission for remaining as bondsman, replacing the youth, allowing the youth's return alongside siblings. How might he approach his parent lacking the youth's presence? He couldn't witness the suffering affecting his parent. This represented remarkable difference from Judah, who previously recommended trading Joseph for bondage. Currently, he volunteered becoming enslaved personally for protecting Benjamin. This sacrificial gesture and sibling affection profoundly affected Joseph. Joseph couldn't maintain emotional restraint. Get ready for one of the most powerful moments of forgiveness ever recorded. If this doesn't move you, nothing will. Genesis chapter 45 verses 1 and 2 explains, Joseph couldn't restrain himself before every assistant, shouting for everyone's departure. Therefore nobody remained during Joseph's disclosure toward his siblings, crying loudly enough for Egyptian citizens hearing, with Pharaoh's residents learning regarding it. Through flowing emotion, Joseph ultimately disclosed his persona. He identified himself as Joseph. Did his parent remain living? His siblings became extremely shocked, unable to answer. Subsequently, Joseph requested they approach nearer. Following their approach, he proceeded identifying himself as Joseph. Their sibling traded toward Egypt. Yet, currently they shouldn't experience anguish or fury toward themselves regarding trading him there, since preserving existence prompted divine intervention, dispatching him forward. Listen to what Joseph says next. These words have helped millions of people forgive the unforgivable. This represents Scripture's strongest statements. Joseph maintained zero bitterness regarding bondage years and unfair detention. Rather, he recognized divine involvement throughout all occurrences. Genesis chapter 45 verses 7 and 8 documents his clarification, stating divine intervention dispatched him forward, maintaining earthly survivors while preserving existence through significant rescue. Therefore, they hadn't dispatched him there, rather divine intervention. Joseph described 5 additional starvation years approaching, directing siblings to transport their parent alongside complete households toward Egypt, where he would supply requirements. He held Benjamin crying, subsequently held every sibling. Eventually, they communicated collectively. Emotionally overwhelmed, Pharaoh learned regarding Joseph's siblings' presence, feeling satisfaction. He presented Egypt's finest territory, dispatching vehicles assisting household and possession transportation. After siblings reached Canaan, explaining Joseph remained living, governing Egypt entirely, the elderly leader initially doubted. Genesis chapter 45, verses 26 and 27, states they informed him Joseph remained living, actually controlling Egypt entirely. Jacob became shocked, doubting them. Yet after learning all Joseph's statements alongside observing vehicles Joseph dispatched for transportation, their parent Jacob's essence renewed. Jacob, alternatively called Israel, subsequently chose traveling toward Egypt, observing his cherished child before passing. Traveling through Beersheba, the divine communicated during evening revelation, stating his identity as the divine, his parents divine. He shouldn't worry traveling toward Egypt, since transformation into an extensive population would occur there. Divine presence would accompany toward Egypt, certainly returning him subsequently. Joseph's personal touch would seal his vision. Therefore, aged 130 years, Jacob journeyed toward Egypt alongside complete relatives, 70 individuals collectively. Joseph arranged his vehicle, traveling toward Goshen for parental meeting. Genesis chapter 46, verses 29 and 30 relates their touching reconciliation. Joseph arranged his vehicle preparation, traveling toward Goshen for meeting his parent Israel. Once Joseph presented himself, he held his parent, crying extensively. Israel addressed Joseph, stating readiness for passing, having personally witnessed his continued existence. Joseph presented 5 siblings before Pharaoh, who verified Goshen's settlement possibility, Egypt's finest area, additionally presenting employment for animal expertise. Joseph additionally presented his parent before Pharaoh, with Jacob favoring the Egyptian leader. While starvation continued, Joseph intelligently administered Egyptian assets. Initially, individuals exhausted finances purchasing grain. Following financial exhaustion, Joseph traded animals for sustenance. Eventually, lacking possessions, they traded territory including personal servitude toward Pharaoh. Via these actions, Joseph obtained most Egyptian territory for Pharaoh, excluding religious territory. He subsequently created arrangements allowing individuals cultivating Pharaoh's territory, providing 20% harvest taxation, retaining 80% personally. This management arrangement lasted multiple generations. Jacob's relatives thrived within Goshen. Genesis chapter 47 verse 27 explains Israeli settlement within Egypt's Goshen area. They obtained assets there, becoming productive, expanding significantly numerically. Following 17 Egyptian years, Jacob felt approaching conclusion. He summoned Joseph, requesting avoiding Egyptian burial, rather transporting remains toward ancestral territory. Joseph pledged compliance. Subsequently, learning parental illness, Joseph transported both children, Manasseh alongside Ephraim, enabling Jacob's favor. During an emotional instance, Jacob intersected limbs, positioning right touch upon Ephraim the younger, left upon Manasseh the older. Joseph attempted adjusting his parent, believing elderly confusion caused incorrect positioning through weak vision, yet Jacob answered understanding completely. This one would additionally form populations, becoming significant. However, his younger sibling would exceed him, with offspring forming numerous populations. Jacob subsequently officially claimed both grandchildren personally, providing Joseph twice the household legacy. Following, Jacob summoned every child, providing individual future favors. Toward Judah, he predicted leadership wouldn't leave his lineage before the rightful individual arrives. Toward Joseph, he discussed plentiful favors from paradise and ground. Eventually, following favoring every child, Jacob passed aged 147. Joseph collapsed upon his parents' expression, crying above him, embracing him. He commanded medical professionals preserving Jacob's remains, requiring 40 days, with Egyptian citizens grieving 70 days. Through Pharaoh's authorization, Joseph transported his parents' remains for interment within Machpelah's cavern within Canaan, containing Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, alongside Leah. Substantial Egyptian accompaniment joined relatives for services, demonstrating Joseph's earned admiration. Following Jacob's services, Joseph's siblings started worrying that lacking parental influence, Joseph could eventually pursue retribution for previous offenses. They dispatched Joseph communication, stating Jacob requested before passing that he excuse sibling offenses. Genesis chapter 50 verse 17 explains Joseph's response. After obtaining their communication, Joseph cried. His siblings subsequently appeared individually, prostrating, declaring themselves his bondsmen. Joseph's answer within Genesis chapter 50, verses 19 through 21, shows his personalities and beliefs' extent. They shouldn't worry. Did he replace divine authority? They planned damage toward him, yet divine authority planned benefit, achieving current results, preserving numerous existences. Therefore, they shouldn't worry. He would supply their and their offspring's requirements. He comforted them, communicating gently. Joseph existed 110 years, observing Ephraim's offspring's third generation. Before passing, he addressed his siblings, stating approaching death, yet divine intervention would certainly assist, transporting them from this territory toward territory pledged through promise toward Abraham, Isaac, alongside Jacob. Joseph required Israeli commitment that during divine assistance, they would transport his remains from Egypt. Following passing, he received preservation, placement within Egyptian container. Over 400 years would elapse until Moses, throughout Exodus, transported Joseph's remains toward promised territory, accomplishing this remarkable individual's concluding appeal. Within Joshua chapter 24, verse 32, we observe pledge completion. Joseph's remains, transported from Egypt through Israeli people, received internment within Shechem, within territory Jacob purchased for 100 silver units from Hamor's children, Shechem's parent. This formed Joseph's offspring's legacy. Joseph's existence represented remarkable travel, containing major peaks and valleys, transitioning from preferred child toward bondsman, traded through personal siblings, from captive toward administrator. His account powerfully demonstrates divine authority, including within bleakest conditions. During every challenge, Joseph maintained principles and belief. The youth, previously experiencing significant visions, existed observing their realization through unexpected methods. The youth, possessing vibrant clothing, would eventually dress in Egyptian administrators' elegant fabric. Additionally remarkable remained his capacity excusing those causing injury, identifying divine involvement, including within existence's most agonizing instances. Addressing his siblings, stating they planned damage, yet divine authority planned benefit. Joseph communicated profound religious reality, extending past personal account. Via Joseph's existence, divine intervention maintained Israeli household throughout extreme starvation, enabling expansion and reproduction within Egypt. Beginning through household disaster, concluding through numerous preservations, establishing national creation circumstances. But here's the part that will blow your mind. This story isn't just ancient history. The same God who turned Joseph's prison into a palace is still working today, and what he did for Joseph, he can do for you. Dear companion, remaining alongside throughout, Joseph's account teaches that including existence's most challenging instances, divine authority maintains expanded intentions. Joseph transitioned from whole toward detention, from detention toward royalty. He experienced betrayal, trading, incorrect charges, abandonment, yet maintained belief and principles. Upon ultimately disclosing persona toward siblings, he communicated something requiring internal reflection. They planned damage toward him, yet divine authority planned benefit. Wait, before you go, I need to ask you something important. Joseph waited 13 years from the pit to the palace. 13 years of betrayal, false accusations, and forgotten promises. But he never gave up. So here's my question. What pit are you in right now? What betrayal are you carrying? What dream seems dead? Because if God could turn a slave into a prime minister, what could he do with your situation? If this story hit you hard, here's what I want you to do. 1. Share this with that one person who's going through hell right now. You know who they are. They need to hear that their pit has a purpose. 2. Comment below, which part wrecked you? Was it when his brothers sold him? When his dad cried for years? Or when Joseph said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good"? I read every comment and respond personally. 3. Hit subscribe and the bell, not for me, but for you, because next week I'm dropping another story that will shift your entire perspective on pain and purpose. Remember this, Joseph's brothers meant to destroy him, but they actually positioned him to save nations. Your enemies might be setting you up for your greatest victory without even knowing it. The same God who was with Joseph in that pit is with you in yours. See you in the next video. And remember, your breakthrough might be tomorrow. Oh, and one more thing. If you're that person who never comments but this story touched you, break the silence today. Type "pit to palace" in the comments if you're believing for your own transformation. Let's believe together.